Hey guys, what's up? It's Schlaw. Today bringing you yet another episode of Car Rides with Schlaw. And I am exhausted. I have really been doing a lot recently. Been thinking a lot about a lot of different things. But I feel a slowness. I feel a slowness coming over me. I'm not quite as crazy feeling as I was feeling. If that sounds right. I don't know how else to describe the way I am feeling right now. I guess my first thing to talk about is really reiterating the idea of the truth, of the potential truth of luck and circumstance, but that those beliefs, even if they are true, are very negative to even entertain. That's kind of the problem with the mindset. It doesn't lead to anything good if you believe that things are just based on luck or based on circumstance. I think it's true. I think we've talked about that before. About, again, there is just genetic differences with free will and whatnot. But either way, the reason why as an ideology it doesn't make any sense to believe is that even if your free will genetic is below average, you're not gaining anything by believing that you're being limited or believing that you don't have free will. There's nothing to be gained by that. So that's kind of the problem with thinking it. Is it ends up limiting you. I think it ended up limiting me. It is a potential limiter. Whether true or not, it prevents actualization of the self. So therefore, I don't think it's very relevant to believe, is it? Nope. So I'm trying to move past that, or I'm trying to trick myself into thinking my situation is good, or I don't even know. But I guess as an analysis of what is, maybe it's not relevant, as that is the big thing with the free will versus not free will debate, is that it's unknown. It's a lot of stuff that isn't provable. My theory, I think, is closest to objectivity, but I can't prove it. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it is better to just believe what's best for the human condition or the human state. I'm not really too sure about it, but in terms of, is it good to seek the objective always, or is it sometimes good to delude the self in something out of beneficiality? Did I just make up a word? I don't think that's a word, but it could be. Could be a word. There's a lot, I guess, that I still want to talk about, but I guess I'm feeling like we're at the end of the rope of topics to talk about. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of drying up again, which is weird because I was slammed with this surge of topics, but I guess my predictions, it's a different energy now. I don't really know. It was a very exciting energy for the past week and a half, but now I almost feel like things are dying down a little bit somehow. If that even makes any sense. I'm not sure how else to describe that. I mean, there's still something going on. Obviously, I'm not dead yet. I'm never dead, really. I'm always alive, truly. I think especially compared to a lot of people. Always alive, truly. I did finally listen to the recording with this new mic, and I don't think it's peaking. I mean, it's possible that I should make the distance a little bit further away, but for the most part, I do think it's doing its job. Although it didn't always do its job, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. But I feel like I made a lot of the predictions I needed to make. I'm not really sure. I guess nothing's coming to me either. I mean, during that period that, I guess the past, I don't even know how many episodes it was. It just felt so automatic. It felt like the words I was saying came over me. Something came over me. And that, well, I guess I could say even now, it's kind of the same way. It's usually how it works with me. It seems fairly automatic in terms of what I talk about. But I just wanted to take note and kind of chronicle that whatever was coming to me over the past couple days, I think was specifically significant. And I don't know if that will end up being the case long term. I guess we'll find out in the coming days, weeks, or months. But it really felt like something to me. It felt like something special. And we'll have to see where it goes. I don't know, but I really felt like those past couple episodes were a good showcase of a different vibe, maybe a vibe that was not overly apparent on this show. But now it's recorded and it will be uploaded whenever it's supposed to be uploaded. Because today, if you're curious, I don't think I've done this in a while. Today is Wednesday, June 9th. So I used to be a little bit more organized with things, but I've kind of set myself up for a further buffer because I think it's a little more comfortable to not... There's not really a reason to have it super live, so I think it might have been this week. I only uploaded 9 episodes, so there was only 1 upload today, I believe. And then I set it so there's a 3-episode buffer now, which I think is a little bit safer. And I'm probably going to expand that. So the episodes won't be as live, but I don't really think it matters. I think the purpose of this show is that I really have archives and transcripts of my thoughts. And whether I believe thoughts said on this show anymore or whether I've changed my mind, I think I'm going to evolve, hopefully. I think I've already evolved a lot as a person. I regret not doing this sooner, but I am assuming it was fated to start when it did, as I am believing a lot more in the power of fate and the power of destiny now. And I'm hoping that there is something in store. But before, there was nothing chronicled, so how could I even know that? I wasn't giving myself a chance, really. That was the problem. I wasn't giving myself a chance. So, is what it is, I suppose. Now I'm happy with the place I'm at, right? It's not stagnation anymore. I'm not particularly sure why. I just think the people I was around for some reason have never... I don't think I've ever really been able to appreciate what I brought to the table. It seems like a lot of people have just dismissed me. And my hope is that now that the future is more here, a lot of my ideas are becoming more at home. That's kind of my intuition about it. And I'm hoping that will be the case. I'm more hopeful about the future now because I believe people like me will get credit for what they deserve. That's what I think now. Because I do everything by the book, and I don't really get any significant reward for that. I guess it kind of is a new concept to explore into, though, since I am so I've developed this very mechanical view of a lot of pretty rigid standards to hold myself to, and things, a bunch of different stuff, right? That's kind of my whole philosophy, has been rigidity and structure, and intentionally trying to do things as perfectly and optimized as possible. But where does fate come into that? There's obviously lots of people who don't think about that at all, and they do just fine. When we talk about inequality, that's kind of the case, right? You have a class of people where they don't really waste energy trying to do things efficiently. They really focus on just making stuff happen, taking risks even at the expense of others. And I guess that's just a framework I'm not really I have not intrinsically thought about that, at least not in a while. For any of my recent ideological shifts, it has definitely been towards order and towards a proper objective. But I'm still pretty confident that that framework will be true. It especially will be true for most people. Now, you could still always have a rich class that is sort of exempt from the rules. You see that now, right? I guess the idea is, so the issue is, and I think I've talked about this before, the problem with having the problem with elitism as it stands is it's not based on merit necessarily. There are some people, and maybe most people who are millionaires or billionaires are there due to merit and merit alone, but some of them I don't think are particularly useful or necessarily good for the specific of futurism and human progression. And I think that is the issue, is that with the way capitalism is now, there's no way to regulate that. Or I guess with the surveillance state and its infantry, it's difficult to kind of organize things. And so that's kind of my hope, is that my story could end up being insane, right? It's a story of somebody who I was always just not acknowledged. I don't really know why. I still, even as making this show, I guess I still don't really feel confident about what I'm doing because it's not getting a lot of traction yet. And it's very frustrating because I feel like with just everything about my show, it's so much. I'm talking about these topics while driving, which not a lot of people could do. A. B. It's really consistent. And I'm even having thoughts today where I might start recording an episode during lunch, and then we could have like 3 episodes a day, which would be wild, and it would make it so we could actually do 2 uploads every single day of the week, including Saturday and Sunday. Because if I was doing 3 recordings a day, that would be 15 episodes a week, and there's 14 days in a week. Oh, I don't know what I just said. I think I'm saying 14 days in a week because it's 14 days in 2 weeks, and I'm so used to thinking about that because I'm paid bi-weekly. But that was still really silly to say. 7 days in a week, 15 recordings can easily have a bit of a surplus, especially considering the fact that I may not always record during lunch. I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know if I'm truly mentally ready for that yet. But I think especially as the weather gets colder, it will become a more interesting potential way to kind of push as the amount of content I'm putting out to an even further extreme. I am very intrigued by the idea of having that many uploads. It is going to be a lot of work, but it will also encapsulate a midday vibe, which you're not really getting. I mean, you see what it's like when I've just rolled out of bed. You see what it's like after a long day at work, but we're not striking me potentially at my best, which is midday. So I think it's a really neat idea. And if I'm already absurd, what I'm doing is already absurd. I really think you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of other people who are doing what I'm doing, and especially with my intention for the length of what I'm doing, I think you'd be very hard pressed to find a lot of other people like me. I don't make any money off of this. I don't really have an audience at this point. So the amount of dedication, I think, is more notable than people who... And note, I'm not saying this out of ego. I'm saying this to keep myself going. Because like I said, nobody I know has specifically acknowledged this as much of anything. It's kind of just going under the radar. I don't get it. I don't understand why it's going under the radar. Because I think the whole story behind it is very impressive. Here's somebody who's working over 50 hours a week, 50 some hours a week with the commute, and turning the commute into a car ride, and it's 6 hours of footage a week. Potentially soon closer to 8, or potentially it will be 8 to 9 if I end up executing this third episode of the outdoor lunch with Schlaw. Walks with Schlaw is probably what it will be known as. I'm just guessing what I would decide the branding to be. Walks with Schlaw. I mean, what I'm doing is very impressive, and I just don't know that anybody really says that, or they're not really saying it. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of strange. Not that I know many people, which I think I said on here before, but I also believe that's been a sign from God to just... I've been put on this earth to talk. I've been put on this earth to record. And by focusing so much on friendships and relationships, it is just a waste of time for me. As much as I've been craving that, and as much as those things are so exhilarating for me in particular, I don't think it's really what I was meant to do. I was meant to lead a public outward life, and so I really hope this is the beginning of some actual alignment in my life, and it's no longer going to be confusion. It's no longer going to be not making any sense. And what I was saying earlier is the prophetic nature and timing of everything. I think people like me will benefit greatly from mass surveillance. And I predicted before, and I will predict again, that privacy will no longer exist in the future. And I guess that's an interesting thing to talk about. A super huge limitation with companies is the human emotion that goes into maintaining different positions. So if you're, I don't know, even let's just say the CEO, are we sure that the best person fit to do that is who gets picked? Not necessarily. There's probably favoritism. There could be... I don't exactly know how a CEO is always picked. I assume it's higher ups in a company voting for it. But there's a lot of human error with that, I believe. I don't know that always works out the way it should. It could just be favoritism. It could be who has the most charisma. It could be who looks the best. It could be just who has the magnetism for it. But does that mean they're truly a good CEO? Not necessarily. Even people at all different positions in a job, I feel like even at my job, the position I'm at is a very low-level, entry-level position, and I'm probably capable of doing better at some of the higher-paying positions than a lot of people there. It's just that I'm not really noticed, and you can't do that. Like, I can't just steal someone's position. And so there's this whole politics at play in the workplace, because humans obviously create that. Humans very emotional and want security and want stability, and that's usually the premise, is that once you get a job, you keep it unless you choose to leave, or unless something really significant is the case where somebody, you're really messing up, but there is that human security that I don't particularly agree with. I think it is a huge deterrent of progress, and I think it's something that AI and mass surveillance is going to be able to pick up, because once that's instituted, it would be automatic that I would not be overshadowed in the way I have. There's a lot of talent out there, I think, of people with brains who, again, and I guess I could be wrong. I mean, maybe I'm not all that. I don't want to... I don't know. I don't want to... I still have a hard time being confident about myself. And I don't know if, again, it's the people I've been around or what it is, or if it's that, the crabs don't let the other crab out of the barrel. So usually people just try to keep other people down, and I've just cared too much. I don't know what it is, but I always feel like not great. I don't know how else to word that. I always kind of feel not great. It's a little bit weird, right? So that is a thing I think AI will solve, and it's a huge, huge problem with humanity. There's a lot of older people, obviously, in better positions, and while that's sometimes sometimes true do, that's what happened. I was like merging true and do. Sometimes true due to the fact that experience is very valuable, especially for higher positions, but I think there's also a case to be made that younger people can be a little bit more sharp and a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more quick in some instances. Sometimes, I think age kind of takes its toll, and some people are at their best when they're young, and the way the current system is, it is completely designed to be destructive to young people. It basically gives young people the middle finger. So I think that's a huge problem. I think at any of the stuff I've talked about, this is I know I haven't mentioned this topic on the artificial stability that is created through human emotion in the workforce. I know I have not talked about it, but it is a problem that AI can solve, and we can optimize and make sure that the right people are working the right jobs, and somebody who has a certain skill can get into the correct job. Now, the way we're seeing it now, it's ugly and it's messy. You just have people, I guess like Indeed, just kind of filter through resumes, and then people who don't have a good resume just are invisible. Not sure that I agree with that. That's a little bit silly. But it's the beginning of what will be, where eventually, I guess you'll just upload your brain. That's your resume. It's just, okay, this is me. and then it'll have an accurate IQ score and all these other metrics for companies to look at, and then they'll hire you based on that. And I guess there's some darkness with that too, right? I mean, there's going to be a lot of people hurt by that. But I think, yin yang, there's good and bad. I think a lot of people like me will get recognized better and actually elevated into positions that I don't know that I would have if it wasn't for that. So, like I said, I'm warning people. I don't think my opinion matters much about it, so I don't want people to say, like, I'm evil, because I've already said, I think, I do think we're in an incredibly right-wing economically period, and I agree that left-wing economics are more fair, but that we're not at that point where they would work. I think it would get abused, and I think it could hold humanity back, and that was my initial instinct. Is I can describe myself as a socialist. I don't know, that feels right to me, but I think there's a very important distinction between what feels right and what would be right, and then in reality what would happen under a system like that, which would be potentially more joy. But with that joy, I think would come also it would comfort, but it would also cause stagnation, I think. I'm not sure if that's what's best for humanity. I'm not certain. Because you have to, it's tricky, but I think that, and again, I've really tried to explain it before, I think a lot of this stuff is fated or destined. I think that at some point, there is going to be some kind of a purging. I know it's a really dark topic to talk about, and I don't take it lightly, because I do care about people, but I think I've explained before that, I guess even that's controversial. I don't think there's evidence that everybody is equal in terms of emotional state and care. But that's, I don't know, because it's such a controversial thing to say, right? I guess some people probably are in agreement with it, though, I'm sure, because I think it's fairly obvious, right? There's obviously people who are nicer and people who are meaner. It's very obvious. I don't think that needs to be repeated. And there's people who are good and people who are bad. Right? That's not up for dispute. So the idea of some kind of a purging of people, I think it's going to happen one way or another. And I just don't know if, this is the whole thing I said. You could put in a lot of effort to try to protect people, and then them not even care. And I just don't know. I think that's why the elites are doing what they're doing. Because that's the truth, is we're going into very difficult times. There's been a lot of stagnation. And how do you move forward? How do you really push humanity to its limit? And what do the lower class people want to do? It's a lot of, I don't even know nowadays. Like I said, there's a subset that is basically just they're moochers. They really don't have any ambitions. Then people who are ambitious, I don't know. I think it's a lot of important things to consider when you try to navigate what economic system is truly the best for humanity, and then more importantly, what's inevitable. Because there's my opinion, and my opinion could be controversial, but I don't know. I mean, now that I've thought about it more, it just seems like that is, it may be sadly the case. I don't even know how else to put it, because I've always wanted to help people, and I would prefer a system that's fairer and more helpful. I would really prefer that. But like I said, there is a lot of inconsiderate people. And so how do you rectify that? It just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And again, if people were conscious of the things I'm talking about, then they would have voted way differently, and there would be completely different candidates. I mean, I don't even know how else to... And I know, I guess some of this goes back. I know people would say America is a manipulated example, and other countries maybe they did have fairer, more left-leaning economics, but it's America specifically through whatever intrinsic programming goes on by being an American. They're biased towards more right-wing economics. It's possible that that's the case, but I just don't know, right? I don't know. I think that a lot of stuff is sort of destined, and it seems like humans are voluntarily, across the board, destined for inequality. It just seems like that. And I've explained it through the way we interact with technology, about how most people are spectators now because of technology. Most people are just spectators. If I had to guess, there's only 10% of the population that is seen, that is creators. I obviously am now able to call myself a creator, but I was stagnant for a while, and I don't know that I had much to offer. I still question that. I mean, am I a true creator? I mean, I'm going to identify that. I think it's fair for me to say that at this point. Most people aren't even that, though. Most people are just like mindless spectators who don't really... They never post anything. They never really say much. And then even in terms of the creators, there's a lot of people who... what are they talking like me? No, they're just talking about nonsense, and then that tends to be what most people gravitate towards. But I just think that's sort of intrinsic to what it is. I mean, people voted a certain way. We do have a democracy, and you can argue there are limitations with that, and it gets manipulated by rich people. But still, I mean, at the end of a day, what am I saying? At the end of the day, it's just down to people's ignorance why the system isn't fair. And so I think the moral argument is why... I think I said this before. I mean, why should billionaires have to look out for other people that can't even educate themselves to vote? I mean, it sounds harsh. I don't like saying this kind of stuff, because I do care about fairness, but I think fairness goes different ways too. Yeah, so I guess there was still stuff for me to say, and I guess even some of the stuff I just said, there's more elaboration, but we are home, basically, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to really say. I know what else to say, there just isn't enough time to keep talking, so. But yeah, it's been yet another not fiery episode, although I guess some fire crept in there towards the end, but it is time for Sayonara Schlaw. So it's been Schlaw, but bye Schlaw. See ya Schlaw.